Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm Haley Mitchell Haugen. I am the editor of Sheila-Na-Gig Online and Sheila-Na-Gig Editions. And tonight we've gathered to celebrate the publication of Pamela Wax's Every Single Beast of My Heart. This poetry collection has been out for a couple of months now. We're very excited to have Pam here to read from the collection and just celebrate this wonderful journey that we have with the book too. We had a great time, I think, putting it together and talking about the poems and just it really was a nice little journey. So I know we're all excited to hear from you, Pam. I'm going to just give you a little bit of blurb about the book and some information about Pam if you don't know her. The book, framed through the lens of the five Zen remembrances, every single beast of my heart weaves poems on aging, mortality, myth, and folklore into a meditation on impermanence. The narrator's loss of her brother to suicide, her role as a rabbi, and her deep relationship to the natural world all influence the engaged, spiritual, and feminist worldview of Wax's poems, in which we come to understand that worldly engagement must ultimately ground our lives. Pamela Wax is an ordained rabbi who has worked as a congregational rabbi and pastoral counselor and an adult educator. Her articles and essays on topics of feminism and Jewish spirituality have been published in numerous books and periodicals. She's the author of two previous poetry collections, Walking the Labyrinth from Main Street Rag and Starter Mothers from Finishing Line Press. Her poems have been published in over 60 literary journals, have received three Best of the Net nominations and awards from Crosswinds, Patterson Literary Review, Poets, Billow, Oberon, the Reuben Rose Memorial Poetry Competition, and the Robinson Jeffers Tour House. Pam lives in northern Berkshire in Massachusetts, and we're so excited to have you here with us tonight, Pam. Go ahead and take it away.
Okay, I'm thrilled to be here. And Haley, thank you. You were amazing to work with on this collection. I couldn't have been luckier. And I'm so grateful that you liked my book enough to want to publish it. So, as you already know, the book is framed through the five Zen remembrances. It's in five sections. For those, each of those five, I am of the nature to age. I'm of the nature to grow ill. I'm of the nature to die. I'm of the nature to lose everything I love. And I am my deeds. That's a paraphrase of how they are named in the book. Um, but I'm going to start, read poems from each of the sections, starting with I'm of the nature to age. The first poem is called Pulling the Dead from the Pool. It's on page 5 if you have the book, and it is a sonnet if you don't, for Hulda. I'm reacquainted with death each morning as I skim corpses of mice, frogs, and moths from my friend's pool. Before I swim, I discern a sheeny copper beetle, Japanese, from a longhorn, a leggy mosquito hawk from its namesake. Scooped and soggy on the net, the bees make me saddest, auguring the collapse of creation. I toss them into the woods, a bit too casually, it seems now. I watch an eagle circling against changeling clouds as I backstroke, half pondering his comeback from near extinction. My friend told me a moose jumped the fence and drowned in her pool years ago. But I need no memento mori, me, well into autumn, still swimming open air, racing against my fishy self, limber and cold-blooded. So, right from that poem, which is actually the second poem in the book, we get the aging and we get the climate change grief that's a part of this book. It's not just grief for loved ones, but it's also climate grief, and it's also about loss of women's rights and reproductive rights in particular. Um, and also that cold-blooded at the end comes up in other poems in terms of the morality, which is the arc that gets me to the last section about I am my deeds. The next poem I'm going to read on page 21 is Puffball, and it's the first prose poem I ever wrote. At a point when I said, I hate prose poems. I don't know what prose poems are. I don't know why they exist. And then now I write them. Puffball. It gleamed like a volleyball in our backyard, smooth, white, round. My husband mentioned it to the neighbor across the street. Our kids play softball, she said. We waited for someone else to claim it, but it was still there the next day when I watered my zucchini, and the day after that when I took the kitchen scraps to the compost heap. It was there as my husband crossed the lawn to his workshop in the barn, and when I took the blue camping chair out of the garage to savor the autumn panorama we're lucky enough to boast from our yard. We didn't realize it was a living thing until it was already brown, its spores spewing forth like a dust storm when my husband mowed into it. All of a sudden, that aging fungus became a metaphor for hindsight of every kind, and I was glad for that afternoon I spent watching the light play over the Berkshire Hills. And I grieved all over again for the dead I'd lost before knowing I should say goodbye. And I looked at my husband, all his gray, which made me look in the mirror at mine. Poof, I said, I'm of the nature to age. Remembering my first gray hair over 3 decades before, how I pulled it out and taped it to the bathroom mirror, a philosophy to brush my teeth to, while hoping against hope for foresight. So I'm going to read one that comes with a little bit of a trigger warning. The title tells us, to my brother who left an I love you, when can we talk message one day, then jumped from a bridge the next. This is back on page 6. Tell me, would you, about the inscrutable darkness and the glimmer of us that couldn't lure you to hold the living? About how you could go headlong into the negative space that must have welcomed you in ways we did not. How you reconciled to that moment on a Saturday pre-dawn, stood on a railing above a river and said, now. How your yes outpaced your no on the way down. Doubt spilling from your pockets like loose change. So much that you felt buoyant, even for that instant. My brother's name was Howard, and if you noticed how many times I used the word how in the poem, which seems to happen anytime I write a poem about him, the word how becomes a kind of litany and anaphora in those poems. And when I write texts and use the word how, it always pops up as Howard. I always have to go back and edit texts because the word how shows up as his name. So the next section of the book is I'm of the nature to grow ill, and I'm only going to read one of my climate change poems from that section on page 25 called These Days I'm a Scarecrow. These days I'm a scarecrow, posted like the clothesline, frayed and weathered, exposed to elements with no mercy, one arm pointing skyward, the other heartward. I hang here guarding a dust bowl of dead things, barren, birdless. my lips stitched into a black line, 3 dots, 3 dashes, 3 dots. No one left to read them. So in the next section, I'm of the nature to die. Um, the poem I'm going to read, Naming My Animals, on page 43, has the title of the book in it at the end. Naming My Animals. Those little red ones you like, my husband said, pressing his forefinger to the joint in the middle of his thumb to form a small circle. He wants me to know what's on sale for my rebound trip to Stop and Shop. Cherries? I ask. He nods. I'm not good at fruit and vegetables. It's true. His merchandise is tools. He woodworks his way through sanders and planes, can see saws and squares, adzes and lathes, where I observe mere machine and blade. I name things of nature, labeling clouds nimbus or cumulus, contrasting heart-shaped leaves, linden versus aspen, mild-mannered ladybugs with badass Asian lady beetles. I know my apples, Gala, Empire, Mac, and Dinosaur from Red Russian Kale, both prehistoric. I try to classify each tiered layer of grief, its raging undercurrents of horror and remorse, despair that douses each morning's blaze, reptilian flights and freezes that hiss anonymous curses at the waning moon. Nuances abound, and yet I am still trying to name all my animals, every single variegated beast of my heart. So this had been the initial title of the book, Every Single Beast of My Heart, and it didn't gain traction for a year. There were no nibbles, no positive feedback, and I sent it to somebody for feedback who said, the title doesn't work and you need sections. It was a totally different format than it is now with these sections. And I said, well, what do you suggest? And he said, that's for you to figure out. And it was very clear after that conversation that it had to be around the 5 Zen remembrances. And once I organized it that way, the title did make sense because the Every Single Beast of My Heart, in light of that poem, is all of the many ways that grief is experienced. So I'm very grateful to him, even though he didn't help me make the sections, but it was very clear ultimately. So the next poem from this section that I'll read is called Dear Sylvia, referencing Sylvia Plath. It's on page 56. Dear Sylvia, it was JFK's demise at 46, not yours, that hung heavy in the curtains with my mother's Kents when I was 3. Cronkite's voice caught at 2:38 Eastern Standard, cut into As the World Turns on CBS, and everything is still lopsided. Even after my father came home to hug us midday, it never recalibrated for your 1-year-old who kicked off at 47 by hanging. You were 30 when you reclined into that oven. I learned about you from Phyllis, my professor. Death by carbon monoxide at 36, like your friend Anne in the garage. Phyllis's daughter died at 23, gored by her boyfriend in a church parking lot. My friend Cindy plunged from a window, her 10-month-old strapped to her chest. He survived, but who knows? And consider my niece, my nephew. 5 years after my brother, 53, sailed from the Skyway over the Calumet, it was dark, nearly dawn. The next section is titled here, I will be separated and parted from all that is dear to me. I should have done the translation I prefer, of the nature to lose everything I love. And I will read at Pinto Lake on page 65. Pinto Lake is in California. It says for REA, but at this point it's in memory of REA. I heard, but did not see the bittern, his distinctive gulp almost like a bullfrog's. Pineapple undertones wafted as I crushed wild chamomile underfoot, with live oaks above me, their arms extended as wide as they are tall, covered in dangling Spanish moss, like bluish phantom hair. My guide pointed to a tarp-covered ofrenda across the lake, built by a woman who saw Jesus there on the bark of a tree. The Parks Department allows it to stand. Inside, lit candles, a bowl of water, paper banners that float on the breeze like the spirits they are meant to greet. The candles will guide the dead to this place. The water will slake them. The pilgrimage is long, harrowing. My friend, alive just a few miles away, will soon journey among them. I brought him a book of Japanese death poems and one of Hasidic teachings on hope and joy. He meditates his way to acceptance, one Zen truth at a time. I will be separated from everything. I send him a wind chime to guide his way. May it arrive before sound, his last sense, leaves. Page 68, one of my raging feminist poems, If You Can't Say Anything Nice. If you can't say anything nice is how my mother would begin. So I, like an unassuming mollusk, maybe an octopus, would compress myself into a spiraled conch perched on my intercontinental shelf, where the not nice lingers, submerged, descending as silt and sediment to the seabed, an abyssal plain, a volcanic hill, hideous, layers of calcareous ooze percolating, a hydrothermal vent of all I was not allowed to air on the sandy surface where I seethed. And if anybody hasn't yet seen on Netflix Bright Remarkable Creatures about the octopus Marcellus, I recommend it. It was better than the book, I thought. Page 85, the last poem I'll read, which is in the section, My Actions Are the Grounds on Which I Stand. I Am My Deeds. I'm going to end with If You're Lucky, page 85. When I wrote it, Jane Goodall was still alive, so it was in memory of her. It's also clearly a pandemic poem, so a little dated on that count, but if you're lucky, You love that Jane Goodall writes about hope, despite all the bad news on your doorstep, like a million species as sitting ducks on their way to extinction. You get nature's lust to recreate itself, how the peregrine falcons re-nested after the black air in Sudbury, how the nuked oleanders in Hiroshima revived, how the octopus grows a new arm, the skink, a new tail. But your mind does loop-de-loops around Jane's faith in the human will to resurrect ourselves. If you're lucky, most of life is boring. You get up every morning to pee, turn on the tea kettle, zoom through your day. Sometimes that humdrum is punctured by breaking news, an unprecedented storm bolting up the coast, another insult from clogged chambers of Congress, a novel variant of despotism, or a text from a friend about her diagnosis. You recount these aberrations on your weekly phone calls with distant relatives, rehash false memories of good old days on the levee where Archie was just some fiction in Queens, not the guy behind the deli counter at Safeway who gives your BLM t-shirt stink eye. You'd rather shine light like Jane in the nooks of possibility, slow dance with faith in the one above, face down fear that this will be the day the music dies, confident in the radiating powers of your friend's treatment, happy for a while, joking full throttle with the guy behind the deli counter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pam. It's wonderful to hear these. And I didn't know the story about how you came up with the Zen remembrances. So I think your friend was right to let you find the path to that because I think it was there. You just had to tease it
Yeah,
out.
the poems were already there, the references were already there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was buried more.
Yeah, so beautiful to hear these and celebrate this book. We are celebrating Pam Wax's Every Single Beast of My Heart from Sheila-Na-Gig Editions. All right, thank you, Pam. We're going to move on now to our invited mic readers of the evening. We have 7 women who are all, like Pam, Sheila-Na-Gig edition book authors. So very excited to have them all here. And we will kick off with Judy Kronenfeld, who is, I forgot where you are now, Maryland, right? I think.
Okay, finally got myself unmuted. Thank you so much, Pam. I'm amazed at the number of people, aspects of yourself in your poems. So many, and so cohesively. The naturalist, the person who knows Hasidic lore, but also Zen. It's really quite a number of woven together selves in a beautiful way. There's so much. There's so many things to confront as in your list that names the 5 sections, and yet your poems are all incredibly beautiful. So I find that splendid. Okay, I'm going to read a rather long poem that's one of my absolute favorites that appeared in, of my own, that appeared in Sheila-Na-Gig several years ago. And then if there's time, maybe a shorter one. Saving the Dead. And the epigraph is, our memory is the only help that is left to them. We carry them inside us like persons still unborn, as if everything they might be again awaited them. The bodies of our mothers before we were born, the once coquettish bodies of our prim mothers. My mother balanced on a honeymoon hayrick with my father, his palm sweeping her face towards his for a kiss, a white hibiscus flower blowing in her black, black hair. The bodies of our fathers, flat-bellied in their crisp-pressed uniforms, standing near the wings of the flying fortress, on the deck of the Massachusetts. My father grins at a monkey on his lifted arm, on a tiny island purpose-built refueling stop. All those kept safe for us by luck. Time startled and lurching forward, we still carry them. The bodies of our mothers rocking with ours, groaning with us when we are ill. The smell still in my nose of my mother's richly metallic fertile blood on the Kotex in the bathroom. The carving out of her womb and so many others. The decades beating furiously away. The long ah of their sighs as they settle into our warm cars to be taken to the doctors. The bodies of our fathers, their huge hands under our backs as they teach us how to float. Their sturdy shoulders we ride into the breakers. My father's arms cradling my 4-year-old body zonked on the cherries I stole from a tray of Manhattans at an aunt's wedding. Home we go, home on the subway. The careless crowding generations, the cracking of their chests, their plaintive, reedy cheeps, but I enjoy it when we urge them not to eat fast food. We carry them. Their years fanned out again, unshelved, as we are carried towards the indignities of our own bodies. We are together, undone by time, about to be undone, about to be undone by the bodies that carry us. And in me, my authors dream again as I dream, imagining my progeny rebirthing me in all my hope. A lustrous dream of being carried forward. This poem means a lot to me, this next one, because I have moved in the last few months from California to Maryland, and after living in a house in Riverside, California for 50 years. So this poem was in One Art, and then it was in an anthology by Diane Lockwood with Terrapin Press called What the House Knows. When you've lived in a house for 50 years, it breathes with you in your sleep. It lights your lucky way from morning bed to kitchen of blessings, the filled pantry, the humming fridge committed to keeping the berries you love for breakfast firm and delicious. It lets you move freely through its pleasant rooms as you water your peace lilies and philodendrons. And after a slightly scary checkup at the doctor's and some fill-in shopping, welcomes you again for dinner and a little non-alarming TV, watched with your spouse from the soft settee. It vouchsafes both of you a quiet passage to untroubled dreams, guarded as it is by ancestors, assembled in multiple albums in its cabinets, pressed against each other like phalanxes. You want to pray to this house's laures and penates. You want to beg them to never let you leave it, never make you sort the dust-encrusted plastic bins entrusted with hundreds of letters you and your husband wrote to each other in an almost mythical past. You want to entreat the household gods to keep them forever reachable and uncorrupted on their sagging shelf in the garage of inexhaustible mysteries, which has now been altogether cleared out and sold with the rest of the house, which is so hard for me to believe. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Pam, for your fine reading, and Judy, I enjoyed your pieces. Haley, thanks so much for organizing this. The first poem I'll read is from my collection, Everyday Omens, that came out last month from Sheila-Na-Gig. I love it, the cover Haley designed. This first one is called Among. Among the anthers of the lilies in my yard, bees make much of the pink. Trumpet-breasted, fruity musk clinging to their legs. Their throats taste the powders, rich and purple-orange. Coated golden, they blend in with the peeling leaves, moving in contest in a fresh circle, narrowing ever. I act as beekeeper. I, the garden well, caress the speckled roses, dense and potent, an incandescent year. It's open green here among the circle of bees. Rich sugars burrow in my hives and leaf lightening trees. The year's scents, fresh as grasses, strum like heart silk. A garnet-throated hummingbird hovers over the stream as I water. Blossom corollas drip. I hold my breath to see if he will alight on the fall. Tumble to spreading sunrise lantana where water hits. Share nectar with this light, so light. And my second piece is a new poem. So I thought I'd test it out. It's called We Clump Around a Pit, which is actually the first line. We clump around a pit with scoop and garden hose, add bricks with holes, hotels for grasshoppers we've collected. This summer's plague. We toss them into the puddle, watch as they scramble to safety, climb each other's backs, then use sticks to push them out, dump them back into the drink. In each one, we're looking for the formula for childhood, for the spreading time of a field of chicory and blue stem, sudden rain, sun burning dry on unprotected skin. My father changes the oil, hunkers over a repair on his shop bench, uninterested in us and our tortures. Day after day, the sun rises and sets, a different trajectory, same result. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Pam and poets so far. It's been great to be here. I'm trying out like Kris. I'm gonna see if if two of these are working. The first poem is called Unformed. Spring worms, confused by rain, struggle across the sidewalk, their slick bodies almost impossible to scoop into grass, the scraping damage worse than the futile journey. You step over some, wish them well, continue past puddles filled with early blossoms and pollen, your old dogs trying to strain against the leashes but failing because they are old and would rather smell dog pee and raccoon scat in the bushes. The sun sometimes comes out from under the cover of clouds, the train whistle and horn blowing notes of danger. And at home, your adult son sleeps longer than most 40-year-olds can because he is unmoored from a family of his own making for now. Too bad you are still cold, as you have been for months, years, really. Your husband no longer your husband, your life your own. But it's hard to mow lawns, fix doors, call the specialists as if you knew what you were doing, but you might be learning. It's spring after all, and the magnolia is blooming, as is something else you can't name or even see, but you feel it deep inside with every step, each breath, though you are scared to believe in it, afraid that if this sad, straggling hope emerges, the last storm will race across it and yank it away, like maple seeds, like petals, like new things unformed as they push out of the dark, wet soil. And this one was hard to write, but I hope I fulfilled the prompt's promise. It's called A Sudden Good Memory. On weekend mornings, I would leave your Panhandle apartment and run down to Fell Street and then Golden Gate Park. It was spring and then summer and fall, the weather green, gold, and finally russet. I was not young, but still running, my body light. Fresh from the split with my husband, every dream of love and hope possible. I turned onto John F. Kennedy Drive and jogged toward the DeYoung Museum, back to the landmarks of the city I was born in, navigating a park I knew well. Look at me, I thought, feeling abundant, all my parts working together to bring me to this miracle of space, to the man in the apartment. I would craft my life this time. The future would be built on these beautiful choices. I rounded the Japanese tea garden, headed past the music concourse, the fountain, the rhododendrons blooming magenta, pink, white, and then leaved deeply green. How could it possibly be otherwise? Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations, Pam, again for the book. I decided to read an older poem from Sheila-Na-Gig, and that's because it has to do with something happening in my life right now, which is retirement. So this is from an earlier issue of Sheila-Na-Gig online. The head lightkeeper contemplates retirement. And there's an epigraph. The Point Cabrillo light station lens was illuminated for the first time on June 10th, 1909, under headkeeper Wilhelm Baumgartner. I lit the lamp at midnight the first time, then every sunset for going on 14 years. Every 2 hours cranked the chain onto the drum to keep the light's rotation, its signature a flash every 10 seconds. Kept the fog signal on, 2 blares, then silence for 24 seconds. A dance of siren and flashing light. Our charge to warn ships away from shallow reefs and rocky shores. I know in my bones if something isn't right. A speck of dirt on the lens, a stutter in my heart. One day, I'll pass the honor of tending the station to another lay monk devoted to lamplight and siren, to prevent bodies from becoming souls, illuminate their moment of darkness, sound the horn of heaven when fog shrouds them, show the way when they're lost. I'm contemplating retirement. I will miss the ocean's briny smell, waves crashing against the bluff one day, the next a deep blue blanket rippling in the sun. Western gulls' loud calls, sea lions barking, spouts and flukes of migrating gray whales. I'm ready to yield to a craving for a clockless life, a full night's sleep in silent darkness. But what rituals will measure my hours? What calling rule them? Whose lamp will I keep alight? There's a note at the end. According to the archives of the U.S. Lighthouse Society, Wilhelm Baumgartner died in 1923, age 60, while still principal lighthouse keeper at Point Cabrillo. And my next poem is about bicycle riding, and it was published in Gyroscope Review during their April celebration of poetry. They had a poem published every day. Paradise Loop is a bicycle ride in Marin County, California. And the epigraph, mornings are a sustained hymn without the precision of faith. Oliver de la Paz. Days on the bay start overcast. The sun must fight its way out of the fog, like thoughts when first waking up. On the Mill Valley path along the marsh, ribbons of fog mirrored on the surface of small pools garlanded by grass. A great egret, erect, expectant, a scatter of black-necked stilts stepping carefully on their pink rose legs. Along Strawberry Cove, ducks flying low, splash landing, a brown pelican cruising farther out. Birds offer a melodious background to the ticking on my shifters. These sounds silence world's dissonance. On the Bayside Trail, once rail, Tiburon ahead. The name means shark, yet the town is slow-paced, the terminal crowd-free, the ferry almost a toy boat. I stopped at the Depot Museum to take in the view, the Golden Gate Bridge in full display as the morning shroud unravels. Blue has taken over the morning, above and below, in shades from pastel to deep. Aroma of coffee and pastries in the air. Joggers, dog walkers, anglers join me in holding close this sustained hymn, wishing for a splash of faith to believe the next hour, the next day will be this way, these peace. The red bridge, an arc of hope reaching across cold water to the other side. Thank you.
Hi, and thank you so much, Pam. I really enjoyed hearing. I've ordered your book, so I'm looking forward to reading more. This first poem, I'll just tell you what inspired it. It's called Off Ramp, and some of you may remember way back when the Doobie Brothers had an album cover from Captain and Me, and it had an overpass, which just kind of drops, and they're down below. And that is always an image that stayed with me. And there was in the 80s, there was a bridge that part of it fell going into New York City in the night. And so I put those things together. And this is Off Ramp. The overpass sheared off, raw edge hanging, murky water lapping up the slope of the off ramp. No exit here anymore. A test? On a highway, middle of the night, it has happened. Corroded bolts giving way, dropping the span into the river. Do we register the promise broken before we're in the drink, swept downstream? Illuminated in the headlights, a figure in the middle of the roadway, waving arms. Slam on the brakes, skid off the edge, sail past into infinity. And on a little lighter note, this is teaspoons. Very important issue. Teaspoons. The half-life of communal teaspoons at the McFarland Burnett Institute is 42 days, according to a study in Melbourne, Australia. A replication study in a Scottish neuroscience department found that more than 66% of teaspoons disappeared in 10 months of observation, half-lives, 280 days for silver spoons, 182 for gold. My husband claims we throw them away. I'm skeptical. Wouldn't we feel the clank when we emptied the trash? Wouldn't we investigate and rescue them? It happens in restaurants too, he proffers his years in food in service to his argument. People throw them out. There's never enough teaspoons for the job. I'm not buying it, but I don't have a better explanation. The borrowers, the family of tiny people that lives in the cracks of houses, snatching small items. The line between trash and value, a tightrope we walk along. travelers, nomads ever wandering, preceding one exotic cup of coffee to the next, digging their way through outlandish yogurts around the globe. Spies and social climbers measuring out lives, inserting themselves in rich babies' mouths. Thank you.
Okay, this one is newish, called A Traveler's Tale. Oh, it's also my first haibun, which I understand is properly pronounced something like haibun, but I'll say haibun. A Traveler's Tale. I woke this morning feeling posthumous as I lay recalling a college housemate's visitor, a traveler who stayed for a couple of days, told us some stories. She'd spent the past year going around the world with only a backpack and little cash. We wandered a lot then, when travel was cheap, but no less dangerous. Only 19, still a girl, she was smallish and not at all beautiful, but shone. She told us of being stranded alone on a road in the Hindu Kush. The sun was setting when sudden rescue came from British soldiers slicing through mountains in their Range Rover. Once she met Afghan tribesmen who took her by camel to their camp, gave her dinner and a bed for the night. Honoring travelers, even lone foreign females, was their sacred duty. She had the kind of courage I lacked. When she saw fear waiting ahead, she smiled hello as she walked past it. I wanted to travel as she did. I wanted to be her, but couldn't, would never. Found myself lifting a lightweight sweater out of her left open backpack while she was out shopping for trail mix. I'd shoplifted a few times, but this was different. A theft of the first order. Shame rose in a tornado mix of envy and worship. I adored her. She left without a mention of her sky blue sweater, and I wore it as a talisman for years until my life moved on in some way that made me lose it. I remember her intrepid open-heartedness and the lamb she ate as the guest of her nomad brothers and sisters. Reweaving worn memories until we're remembered only in other minds. And the next one is from my book with Sheila-Na-Gig. You can see it. So I'm making a bat mitzvah with several other women in a few weeks. And as part of it, I have to write something about why am I doing this? And then I came across this poem called The Invention of the One God and realized it needs a sequel, perhaps several sequels. And I think why I'm doing it is the thought that Judaism has something to do with democracy, which is, on everybody's minds these days. So this is the first version of The Invention of the One God. It was a good idea on the whole. Now we get full attention. Like us, the many gods get distracted by one another and are prone to fighting, romantic messing, and slacking off. The many gods of storm, wind, earth, and so on administer the world. The one God mainly administers us. We are all this deity's children, though some question how many kids a single parent can raise. Like 2-year-olds, we want our parent to leave us alone in a room to play with our infinite selves until it's time for a cookie and kisses for any bruises we may have sustained. We depend on the one God, not to beget upon us a rival, some pagan, half-god sibling who would only make trouble. We love that the one God has only us. We scrutinize our faces in mirrors and daily give thanks that the one God can't be seen. Thank you.
Hi.
It's really good to be here with all of you. And thank you, Haley, for inviting us to come and read. And thank you, Pam, for your beautiful writings, which have had a profound effect on me. I'll definitely be buying your book. So thank you. And it's good to hear everyone. What a group. So I'm going to read from my book, issued by Sheila-Na-Gig in late last year in November. So it was the holidays then, so we didn't have events until January, but I've had 8 launch events so far. And the book has gotten wonderful attention and praise. And every time I read, I talk about Haley and how great she was to work with. And encourage everyone to watch that calendar and look at the guidelines. Okay, so I'm going to read, I was going to read something else to start, but I'll just read this one because of Pam's work, and it reminded me that I wanted to read this. One of the sub-themes of the book is called Pedregosa Street. It's about living in a very old house for a long time. Judy, your book or your poem about living in a house for 50 years. I have only lived in this house for 30 years, but I had a lot to say about that. And one of the sub-themes was surviving cancer. Paradise. 1. This morning as I drove to work, the sun's forehead hit my windshield, and I passed through a white blind for 1, maybe 2 seconds. Hardly long enough for my foot to let up on the gas. When the sun withdrew and the precious world filled my window once again, this was not a place I recognized. 2. Tonight, as I climbed the long staircase to home, there was a spell where the light from the landing above and the light from the foyer did not touch. I climbed in darkness for 2, maybe 3 seconds, too brief a time to misstep or even pause. Had the stair not risen to meet my foot, I might have fallen through space, as one falls at the outset of a dream, not into the arms of some near earth, but into a new dimension. 3. Tomorrow, if I tell you I am dying, you will smother me with love, don the Velcro of regret, raise your prayers to heaven, that heaven up there. But you will forget again, and on a day much too soon, curse me for a trifle. In time you will know I tiptoed past while you dozed in your chair, on my way to a dimension briefly visited. I always knew paradise was not above us. I wrote that to my family of origin. So the original owners of the house died, and the new owner decided to paint the house, which had always been sort of cream colored. It's an old Victorian. And they painted it this very strange ochre color, which apparently was popular at the turn of the century when the house was built. And this is about the painter who came every day for months, painting the inside and the outside of the house and making it new. Lázaro, the painter. Lázaro, the painter, sings a corrido on the stairs where the ceiling is high and boomy. He hams it up mariachi style. As he rolls out the primer coat, the layer that boosts the final coat, allowing the color to shine through. Lazaro bears the name of a man who, entombed in darkness, was called forth to demonstrate the rewards of faith. Even a dead man may balk at such an offer, may choose to remain in a world dark and now familiar. But Lazarus emerges and walks into the arms of a stranger with a voice seductive as living water. Indeed, his first view of new life quivers behind a veil of tears, his brain doubting more than ever what his eyes tell him to be true. A painter's life is truth, trueness of color, no guesswork involved, each recipe exact as a baker's. He falls in love as he fingers the sample, again as he pries open the can. This house will be the shade of winter squash, red for the doors, like blood of the bull. Not your prim old lady this, but a male Vic, square, with strong cornices. Under the high eaves, Lazaro clings like a spider, reaching to accent sill and curlicue with expert stroke. The size and hair of the brush chosen for each detail. In the morning, he sings on the stairs. In the afternoon, he sings in the sky.
Great to have you here, Enid, all our invited mic readers, all authors of Sheila-Na-Gig Editions books, and Pamela Wax, whose book we are celebrating today, Every Single Beast of My Heart. So great to have you here. Thank you for everyone and our folks who came out as audience today to support Pam. If you hang in here after I turn off the recording, we'll let you ask some questions if you like. And for those of you watching us on YouTube, you can find us at Sheila-Na-Gig blog.com, our books and our online journal. Thanks, everybody.